I go skiing every single day in my mind. I do. I go skiing every day. I'll have a moment. I'll just put down whatever I'm doing, and I just imagine myself on that hill. Give me this mountain. That's a ski hill to me. And I'm thinking of Whistler. I'm thinking of Panorama. I'm thinking of Lake Louise. I'm thinking of Sunshine. I'm thinking of Aspen. I could go on. And that's my happy place. And I make a few turns. Sometimes I'll do a whole run, and I get back, and I get lost in it. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Am I by myself here? Am I the only one who daydreams? Come on, please, really?
Welcome to Church of the Rock from Winnipeg. Stay tuned to this week's thought-provoking message from Pastor Mark Hughes.
Anyway, today what we're going to do, finally, is we are going to complete and finish this series, Faith, the Facts. Are you glad it's over? Maybe not. But, we've had a good journey on this, and we've been looking and really plowing this ground about faith and what faith is all about. And it has to do with, there are facts of life. And we have to deal with hardships. And Jesus said, you will have tribulation in this world. He told us that. But we have this amazing thing called faith that we can apply to those facts. And I've been telling you this for 8 weeks. And today, I'm going to wrap it all up with one little message, and I am calling it Timex faith. That's right, like the watch. Well, somebody already thinks it's going to be good. That's fantastic. Hold that applause to the end, and you can let me know if it really is any good. But let me tell you the story of Timex to begin with. So Timex actually came from a company called Westbury Clock Company, Westbury Watch Company. They were 90 years old in 1944. The war was just starting to end, and people no longer wanted pocket watches. I bet you hardly any of you carry a pocket watch. Everybody wanted a wristwatch. They weren't in the game, and they went broke. 1944, 90-year-old company. And then they reformed, a new company emerged, they wanted a new name, they were going to make wristwatches. And so you don't know this, I bet you don't know this. This is where their name came from. They took the two most popular things in their culture of that day that were household names, and they combined them together. And they were Time Magazine and Kleenex. Kleenex is a household name, isn't it? And they took those things together, and Time Magazine and Kleenex became Timex, the watch. Now you know the story. Second thing they did was they hired the most trusted newscaster of the day. His name was Cameron Swayze. And then they came up with a slogan, which you all know. Takes a lickin', keeps on ticking. How many of you remember that? It went on for decades and decades. So they launched this new line. And of course, what they did was these tests where they were brutalizing these watches. And of course, some of you won't remember these people, but some of you are old enough you will. They took the famous athletes of the day and they put these watches on their sporting equipment. So in this picture, we have Ben Hogan, and they had it on his golf club. And it took a lick and keep on ticking. Mickey Mantle, you know who Mickey Mantle is. They put it on his baseball bat. Took a lick and keep on ticking. Rocky Marciano, anybody remember him? Put it on his boxing glove. There he is, punching something anyway. And of course, took a lick and kept on ticking. They did all kinds of things. Jackhammers, people diving off the cliffs of Acapulco. And every single time, almost miraculously, the watch kept on going. Wasn't that amazing? My favorite one, some of you will remember this, was they put it on an outboard motor propeller. Cranked it up to 4,500 RPM. There's Cameron Swayze back there, by the way. Guess what? Took a licking, kept on ticking. And there's something about that. And then, of course, stories started to come out of the woodwork, sort of like the Tim Hortons real stories. And they had real stories coming out. My favorite one was the story of John Scott. John Scott was working on a team that was installing an elevator in a mine shaft. It was 460 feet into the ground. And they were testing the elevator's brakes. Are you ready for this? They were testing the brakes of this thing, and they forgot that he was in the elevator at the time. And they let it free fall 460 feet and hit the brakes. They brought it back up to the top, and they did it again. They did it for 2 hours. After 2 hours, they opened the door, and there was John Scott lying on his face, half dead, wearing his Timex watch that was keeping perfect time. Takes a licking, keeps on ticking. And that's a true story. So they featured it. He was pretty happy in the end, not at the time, about that. And I think Timex is the perfect example for faith, and I'll tell you why. There's two things about the Timex that you're probably figuring out right now. Number one is the timing. It keeps time. And number two is it's tough as nails, the endurance factor. And when it comes to faith, you have to think in terms of timing, and you have to think in terms of endurance. Primarily because, are you ready for this? The timing is out of your hands. Have you noticed that? I don't know a single person has been able to time the answer to their prayer ever. I've never, ever seen it. It's just completely out of your hands. And why you think you're going to get the answer when you want it is beyond me. The Bible doesn't teach that. And you need Timex faith because you don't know what the timing is. And so you need to take a licking and keep on ticking. That's what you need to do. Timex faith is quite a bit different than Rolex faith. Rolex faith is the faith that the prosperity preachers have. You know, right? In case you're wondering. I don't know if you ever heard this story about this prosperity preacher who's driving down the road in his BMW, went around a corner too fast, the car started to roll, he got thrown from the car, and the BMW went down the mountain, crashed and burned on the other side. In the crash, even though his life was spared, he had lost his left arm. And he's standing there at the edge of the cliff, and another vehicle pulls up, and there he is, bleeding, and this other driver says, "What are you doing?" He says, "My BMW! My BMW!" He says, "But look at your left arm." He goes, "My Rolex! My Rolex!" Everybody has their values, don't they? All right, so here we are. What we're going to do today in Timex Faith is we're going to look at a story that I love to talk about, and it's the story of Caleb. And they have been in for already 5 years into the promised land. And here's what Caleb says to Joshua. "I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought back word to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed the Lord my God. So Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land where your foot has trodden shall your inheritance and your children's forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years since the Lord spoke his word to Moses while Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now here I am this day, 85 years old, and yet I am as strong this day as I was on the day Moses sent me. Just as my strength was then, so now is my strength for war, both for going out and coming in." Here it is. "Now, therefore, give me this mountain," he shouts, "of which the Lord spoke in that day. For you heard that in that day how Anakim were there, and the cities were great and fortified. And it may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said." And Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb. There it is. Now, think about this. Did Joshua really have any choice but to give him Hebron? After all of that, like Moses swore, God swore, here I am, he's shouting. He said, give me this mountain. Isn't that what Jesus said? Didn't Jesus say, you shall say unto this mountain? And he said to this mountain, and he got that mountain. So here's the 3 points of Timex faith of Caleb. Number 1, he perceived. Number 2, he persisted. Number 3, he pursued. Now the first thing was this, was he perceived. Now here's my question for you. What kept this guy? He says he's been 45 years. 40 years wandering in the wilderness, 5 years in battle. What kept this man motivated for that long? What kept him motivated for 45 years? I'll tell you what it was a vision of this place. Because let me let you know a little secret if you did not know this. He had been there before. He was the one of the 12 spies that went in. We know that part of the story. One of the places he went to was Hebron. And when he saw that place, a place flowing with milk and honey, a place where the grapes were so big that you had to carry them on a pole. And he decided that day that that was the place he was going to return and would be his home for him and his family forever. And he made that decision, and he put that in his heart. And he carried that. I mean, what motivated him in the day? I mean, imagine this. Imagine waking up every single day for 40 years knowing what you're going to do that day. What are you going to do? You're going to tramp through the dry, dusty, barren wilderness waiting for your friends and your families and your acquaintances, waiting for a whole generation to pass away. You know what I would think he did? Are you ready for this? I think every day he had to go to his happy place. Do you know what I'm talking about? When you go to your happy place, when you think about that place you'd rather be. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here because you're not nodding or smiling or doing anything. And be honest, I'm not going to make fun of you, not yet. How many of you have a happy place when in the midst of the drudgery of the day, you have somewhere you can go in your mind if you want? How many have one of those places? The rest of you do too. I don't know if I believe you that you don't have one. We all have one of those places. For me, you know where it is? Mine's a mountain, and it's a ski hill. And I go skiing. I've told you this before. I go skiing every single day in my mind. I do. I go skiing every day. I'll have a moment. I'll just put down whatever I'm doing, and I just imagine myself on that hill. Give me this mountain. That's a ski hill to me. And I'm thinking of Whistler. I'm thinking of Panorama. I'm thinking of Lake Louise. I'm thinking of Sunshine. I'm thinking of Aspen. I could go on. And that's my happy place. And I make a few turns. Sometimes I'll do a whole run, and I get back, and I get lost in it. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Am I by myself here? Am I the only one who daydreams? Come on, please, really? All right. So you don't go to have a happy place. You better get one, because that's how you get. That's what I think. And now I'm sort of assuming this, but I don't think I'm far off. That he must have been thinking about this place for 45 years, because when he got there, that's all he could think about. Give me this mountain. I'm going to tell you a great story. I've told it, a number of years ago, but I'm going to tell it again. It's the story of Major James Nesmith. He was an American pilot in the Vietnam War. He got shot down over Cambodia, and he got captured, and he spent 7 years in a prison cell. Let me show you what they looked like. This isn't the exact one. This is in a museum. But they were 5x5 bamboo cells. He spent 7 years in one of those. 7 years. Malnutrition, of dysentery, of sickness, of being wounded, of bugs, of beetles, of all kinds of things you can imagine. And after about only a few months, he realized, I'm not going to survive this place. I'm not getting out of here anytime soon. And if I don't figure out a survival technique, some way to deal with this, I'm not going to make it. And so he took up golf. And he went golfing every single day, and every single day he golfed 18 holes. And when I say 18 holes, anybody know how long 18 holes takes to golf? It's like 4 hours these days, and he would spend 4 hours. Some days he wasn't very busy, and he'd do 36 holes. And he would do it in his mind in real time, and he would imagine every blade of grass and every wind and the weather conditions, whether it was raining or snowing or whether it was a beautiful sunny day, and he would imagine the heat on his face, and he would imagine every shot and every step as he walked to look for his ball, whether it was on the fairway or in the rough or wherever it was. And every single day for 7 years, he played at least 18 holes of golf. It was the only thing that kept him sane. Most people, golf drives them crazy, but when you do it virtually, you're more successful at it. I just want you to know that. And so anyway, he emerges after 7 years, the war ends, he actually gets released, he gets back home. After he recovers in the hospital, the first thing he wants to do, guess what he wants to do? He wants to go skiing, right? No, he wants to go play golf. And so he goes out with his old golf buddies that he used to golf with. First day out, are you ready for this? He shot a 74. They said, James, you've never done better than 90 in your life. He says, are you kidding? I haven't shot over 80 in 3 years. And you see, it's a funny thing, because here's how the mind works. The mind can scarcely determine the difference between fantasy and reality. Do you know that's why people have false memories, and they're a very real thing, and if you hear a story long enough, you think it's a real story, you can't even tell the difference. We have to be so careful about what we dream about, because it just might come to pass. So here's what we need to understand about this, because there's a difference between vision and daydreaming. You have no intention of acting on that daydreaming. You know what I'm talking about. You're looking out the window, you're thinking about daisies and rainbows and unicorns. It's pointless, it's meaningless, it's not a vision, it's just daydream, it's just, useless thoughts. And we all have those useless thoughts, we all waste our time with them, and thank goodness you have no intention of acting on them. And I'll tell you a little story here, super embarrassing, but I can tell you anyway. And so, in our very first church building, we rented it. It was actually a church building. It was a Covenant church, and they had sold the church to a developer. It was sitting empty for a year. We rented it. It was our very first Church of the Rock. We spent a year there. And after 6 months, they announced to us that they were actually converting the building into a bank, and in 6 months they were going to kick us out. And I remember the day they showed up, there was a knock on the door, and the architect was there, and they wanted to go through the building, and they had the plans with them, and I saw the plans, and I just got kind of obsessed with the fact that my office in the building was going to become the bank vault. And so I had so much trouble working in that office from then on because I began to daydream about digging a tunnel. And this is honest to God truth. And I began to daydream about this, and I thought, I've got 6 months to dig this tunnel. I could make a hole, I could dig down, I could go across the lane. There was a rooming house right across the lane with a basement suite for rent. This was the perfect crime, people. And so I thought, I rent the basement suite. It's only 6 months rent. I move the dirt out through the basement suite. I excavate this. No one will ever know. And then I think, why am I thinking about this? I'm not actually going to do this. You got to stop thinking about it. Next day I'd be thinking, well, I'm glad I'm not thinking about that anymore. And then I'm thinking, I wonder if there's any sewer pipes under there. Because if there's a sewer pipe. and here was the weirdest thing. Like I hate to admit this, I planned the whole thing out. I started to draw it out. I started to think about it. The scripture says that a wicked man lies on his bed and thinks evil thoughts. I thought, I've become the wicked man. Now here's the good news. Are you ready for the good news? I never actually did it. I never robbed the bank. And I don't think it would have changed my life much, except I would have a prison ministry, is what I'd have. I'd still be doing what I'm doing. And so you get the point that you're not going to act on the daydreams. A vision is something different. What is faith? Faith is the substance of things hoped for. What is that thing that God has put in your heart? What is that thing that is a compelling vision that you want to pursue, that you need, that you love? That's what God has put in your heart. And so I think of the story of Michael. In the 50s, some of you grew up like I did in the 50s and 60s, and one of the things they did in the schools is they gave you IQ tests. And I'm not going to ask you how many had one. And normal was 100, that was the basis point. I can't remember what mine was, like 220, something like that. And anyway, so Michael gets his IQ test, and it's 70. And they send the results home to the parents, and the parents looked at each other, and they decided they were never going to speak of this number again. And they decided they were not going to tell Michael, and instead they told Michael, you can be whatever you want to do in life, whatever you set your heart to. And Michael, from a very early age, right back from his 70 mark, he had determined in his heart he wanted to be a doctor. And that's all he wanted to do with his life. So his parents encouraged him. And he went through school. He struggled because he actually wasn't as academically smart as the other kids. And he got into high school, and he had to take Latin, and he had to take algebra and biology so he would qualify for pre-med. He got into pre-med, and he managed to pull off a 3.51, which was not the highest mark, but it was Dean's honor roll, and he got into medical school. In May 21st, 1972, Michael graduates from medical school. They're so excited. And his parents decided maybe this was a good time to bring out the IQ test. And they brought out the IQ test and showed him, and he didn't believe it. And then his parents said, the only limitations you have in your life are those you put on yourself and other people put on you. And we told you you could do whatever you wanted, and you did whatever you wanted. See, that's the power of vision. And vision is so captivating. You know, Helen Keller, who was deaf, blind, and mute, but turned out to be a genius herself. She was once asked this question: what would be worse than being blind? She said, to be able to see and have no vision. So the first part of Timex faith is you've got to have that vision. You've got to have that dream. The second part is this. What Caleb did was he persisted. So now he's got the dream. He has to tough it out. He's got to tough it out for all these years. 40 years of not even doing anything. 40 years of just waiting. That's a long time, people. That's your whole adult life. And he's waiting and waiting. But here was what happened. He never lost the dream. You go read the stories. Joseph never lost the dream. Noah never lost the dream. Caleb never lost the dream, right? This is what's going on in this story. Now, we live in a culture that is so much geared towards instant gratification. We are so impatient. Have you noticed that? Everything has to be, come on, come on, come on, come on. That's everything. If you want to go shopping, you don't even have to go to the store. You just go to Amazon. If you have Amazon Prime, it'll come the next day on a Sunday. How does it even do that? And we can't wait. Got to have it. Click, boom, it's coming. They don't even want to watch TV where you have to wait the next week for episode 2. We go on Netflix where we can binge watch. I can start at 10 p.m., be done in time for work the next day. And we value people who are the overnight successes. You know, we look at Mark Zuckerberg. Oh, he's an overnight success. He had one single idea in college and turned it into a $100 billion company. Maybe I'll do that. Or maybe you won't. Or Mark Cuban, who sold his first company, Broadcast.com, after only 3.5 years of running for $5.7 billion. Or Mark Wahlberg, I'm doing Marks, by the way, in case you haven't followed this. Or Mark Wahlberg, who, though he's a completely one-dimensional actor who can only play himself, he can only play Mark Wahlberg, he has movie after movie after movie and is making millions of dollars. Or there's these celebrity preachers like Mark Driscoll, who became a preaching superstar in his 30s. You know what I did when I was 30? I blew up my first church when I was 30. That's what I did. I'm going to take a different approach to this pastoring thing. Oh, I blowed it up real good. Blowed it up real good. My people were so mad at me. Well, first of all, they just wanted to get rid of me. And then they wanted to get me defrocked and lose my ordination. And then they wanted me publicly humiliated. And then they thought, no, they'd be happier if I went to jail. And, well, I guess the bright side is I could have had a prison ministry that way, too. So there's lots of options. But here's what I've discovered, is that I have learned more leadership lessons from my failures than my successes. The good times have not actually been helpful for me or for you. It's our failures in life that help us. What did James say? Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, and when patience has had its perfect work, you will be complete, lacking nothing. Because here's what I've discovered. I have never seen an overnight success yet whose character has been able to match their success. I want you to just think on that one just for a moment. You know why? Because success, on occasion, can come overnight. Character takes years to develop. It takes time. It doesn't take weeks, doesn't take months, it takes years. And who you really be, and let's talk about this. The real measure of success, is it fame? Is it fortune? Is it numbers or whatever? No, it's character. It's who you are. See, was Jesus successful? He was the most successful man that ever lived, but on a worldly level, was he successful? Do you know he didn't even own a house, didn't own a horse, didn't own a chariot? He didn't have any of these things. You know, he said, birds have nests and foxes have holes, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And he had critics coming out of his ears. He says, oh, by the way, woe is unto you when all men speak well of you. And then they crucified him. They killed him. It's not really a success story, but it is because of who he was. And who we are is far more important than what we do. And Timex faith, you're getting the picture here, aren't you? Takes a licking, keeps on ticking. And that's the kind of thing and the kind of person that God's looking from us. That's the kind of people that he wants us to be. He wants us to tough it out. He wants us to take it to the very end. So, okay, the first thing is this. He perceived, then he persisted, and then finally he pursued. So he finally gets into the promised land. This 80-year-old man, that's how old he was when they crossed over the Jordan, he goes to battle. And he's pursuing his mountain. He's pursuing his inheritance. And he's going to tough it out. And he says this to Joshua. He says, I'm 85 years old, but I'm as strong this day as I was 45 years ago. It's an amazing story to me. And, you know, our job isn't to necessarily make things happen. Our job is to just do it. How many of you remember the actor Charlton Heston? He was in a lot of movies. He was Moses, by the way. But he was also Ben-Hur. And in Ben-Hur, he had to do this chariot race. Here's a picture of it. There's Charlton Heston in the chariot race. And he was really nervous about this because he had never actually driven a chariot before, right? He says to the director, and he says, how am I going to win this chariot race? He says, your job is to stay on the chariot. My job is to make sure you win. That's the power of action films, right? And here's my word for you. Your job is to stay on the chariot. It's God's job to help you win. Don't you worry about it. He'll get you there. I'm going to give you a little Jeopardy question here. You ready? And so you have to answer me with what? A question. So it's sort of a who I am. I'll give you a clue on that. So I went to work to support my family at 7 years old. At 9, my mother died. At 25, I lost my job. At 26, I was defeated for state legislature. At 27, I failed in business. At 28, I was elected to legislature, but at 29, my fiance died. At 30, I had a nervous breakdown. At 32, I was defeated for speaker. At 33, I was defeated for nomination for Congress. At 36, I was elected to Congress, but at 38, I lost my nomination. At 40, I was rejected for a land officer. At 45, I was defeated for Senate. At 47, I was defeated for nomination for vice president. At 49, I was again defeated for Senate. And at 51 years old, I was elected as president of the United States. Who am I? Who is Abraham Lincoln? Somebody said, what is Abraham Lincoln? And, but that's okay. You answered with the question, so you did it right. That's not a very inspiring story, except for the end part. I mean, it was one calamity after another. But you know what Winston Churchill said? Winston Churchill said this, that success is going from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. And I really believe in that. That's what Timex faith is. You take a licking and you keep on ticking. Michael Jordan, if that's a little more current for you, his famous line is this. He said, I have missed over 9,000 shots. I have lost almost 300 games. 26 times I was entrusted with the game-winning shot and I missed. I have failed over and over and over again. That is why I succeed. You see, that's what Timex faith is. And so Caleb was 85 years old, and he was just coming into his inheritance. Winston Churchill was still winning elections at 80 years old. We had Benjamin Franklin, who wrote or helped write the Declaration of Independence at 81 years old. Mother Teresa of Calcutta was still at the top of her fame and working in the slums of Calcutta at 84 years old. John Wesley, one of the greatest preachers of all time, he was still preaching. He had traveled 250,000 miles on horseback, and he was still preaching twice a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year at 86 years old. George Bernard Shaw wrote his final play at 94 years old. Billy Graham preached his last sermon at 96 years old. You might be looking at your life and saying, it's too late for me. Are you kidding? You're barely old enough to have started. Your whole life is ahead of you. And what you need to do is you need to persist, pursue. All you need is a little Timex faith. And what do? You perceive, you persist, you pursue. You take a licking and you keep on ticking. Let's stand together, shall we?
If you'd like a booklet to help you understand more about God's gift of forgiveness and reconciliation through Jesus Christ, please contact us, and we'd be happy to send you a free copy of the Book of Hope. visit our website at www.churchoftherock.ca. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.